Thanks for joining us. My name is Jesse Klein. I'm here with Daryl Tempest, the Executive Director of the Canadian Vaping Association, and Charlie Paisano. He is the co-founder of Vape Meet, the Director of Canada's Vape Expo, and the Vice President of the CVA. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Thanks so much for joining us as well. And to introduce Jesse Klein, the newest member to the CVA team, formerly of the National Post. We're very privileged to have a formal journalist on our team. He's going to be heading up PR efforts and starting a lot of cool projects to help us communicate with our membership and, of course, with the appropriate bodies. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So we recently had the Ontario government pass Bill 174, which deals with a whole bunch of things, but specific to our situation that deals with electronic cigarettes. We then had some proposed regulations that the Ontario government put out at the beginning of the month. Daryl, can you tell us a bit about what's in those regulations?
Well, there's a lot that have been proposed. I think the important pieces from the proposed regulations that allow for is one is truly what defines a product vape shop. In the regulations, it's called a vape specialty shop, and really giving it the 85% threshold of vape product. It really kind of signifies, and I think showcase the value that the industry has brought to Ontarians as they go through the path of choosing a less harmful product as opposed to combustible tobacco. So that was really a big regulation that we saw as a tremendous opportunity for us for the years to come in the industry. I think a second really important part was how it's going to be not only regulated, but how it's going to be seen from the public at large. So if you look at convenience stores and if you look at combustible tobacco, it's really stuck in the realm of tobacco regulation and enforcement and tobacco enforcement, where the product vape shops meeting the threshold as defined, which really helps define a product vape shop, also has us in the health unit. So a product vape shop would either register with their local health unit or with a local health integration network, which I think really embodies the spirit of what we've been talking about from vaping from day one, which is that this is absolutely an unprecedented harm reduction opportunity for Canadians, specifically Canadian adult smokers. The third major piece, which I think is the piece that we're really focused on right now, is not only being able to sample, which I know which is a big issue, but these are proposed regulations. So the government has been working with the CVA specifically and almost exclusively to work on and defining what air quality is and helping us incorporate what we identify as the most important science that's available for decision makers today, and legislators are core decision makers, in addition to bureaucracies. And it's really important to understand the definition as it relates to regulations and bureaucracies and legislation. So legislation becomes the house. Regulations change quite often, so that you can have new governments or governments change their mind, they bring in new regulations or redefine regulations. It's really those rules within the game. So it's really, this is trying to work with government to initially set out a path to what those regulations can and should look like for the betterment of all vapors and non-vapors in this province. And start those ongoing and hopefully continuous throughout the years dialogue with both elected officials and bureaucrats to be able to develop those relationships, as we know this industry is going to continue to thrive for years to come.
So can you just can you follow up on that and just tell us a bit about what the CVA has been doing in terms of working with the bureaucracy and working with the Ministry of Health?
Certainly. So we've met with the Ministry of Health first, and that was both with stakeholders from within the Ministry of Health. So that's the elected arm. So these are staff that work for the actual elected minister, or for the minister who's chosen by the Premier. The second is working with representatives from the bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy are those that work for Ontarians in Ontario regardless of political party. So most of these in the ADMs, for example, or assistant deputy ministers, sometimes have as long as 20 or 25 years of experience in their particular job and within their ministry. So we started there in order to work with them on what the legislation looks like. Important to understand their goals, what the goals of government were, and then for us to represent the goals and hopes and interests of the industry. So product vape shops in our case and manufacturers, in order to really be able to say, like, here's how your goals and our goals can actually come together and marry for wins for both sides. Moving from there, once proposed regulations came out, we were very encouraged by a lot of the proposed regulations and what they would have done to not only legitimize our industry. I've had members who have said, you know what, I'm just happy that someone isn't going to stop and shut down my store, right? Because it's not within a completely legal realm. Okay, and helping define what a vape shop is, right? The second part, though, is that when we have contentions, when it's a bit contentious in terms of things like sampling in shop, where we see that as an important platform for adoption rates. So we don't say that it's just important for the business and in order to keep the business going, but really this is about harm reduction. So in order to get people into vaping from combustible tobacco, that it's really critical that they're able to have the best options for adoption as possible. One is enjoying your product, right? Something that works really effectively. So really, when it came down to regulations, that's why they allowed for the provision for promotion and education within a product vape shop. That's why defining it was really, really important, not only for us, but also for the legislators, also for the decision makers, because now they can open up those exceptions without people being able to market to children, market to those who rather than using it as a harm reduction tool, would just pick up vaping, which we know doesn't happen in practicality. You don't just, the majority of Ontarians don't wake up tomorrow and say, I want to start vaping because it's cool. It's, I would say 99% of those are looking for a less harmful product, and that was understood and accepted by legislators. So what they've asked us to do specifically, to get to the core of your question, is they've given us 6 weeks to come together and help consolidate the science that's already available, to bring on other stakeholders. We're working right now with some physicians and cancer researchers that understand that harm reduction and prevention is core and key to lessening the impact that disease has on society, whether that's on people, families, or also the economic impact that it has on the health spend for Ontarians. Also to be able to help define through an occupational health and safety realm what, if any, long-term concerns that we can have from vapor product in the work environment. Because that's one of the things that they did come and say to us, is that their concern wasn't that, hey, you know what, we think that this product or that the vapor is completely benign. Help work with us to bring forth that science over the next 6 weeks so that we can get regulation correct.
And so Charlie, you're the co-founder of Vaping. We're meeting here in your offices right now. So you're in the industry. How will these proposed regulations affect you and other manufacturers and vape shops out there?
To be quite honest, I'm actually excited about them. I think this is a huge win. To further your point, it's not only significant that they've defined what a vape shop is, but it's important to examine how they did that. So that 85% threshold is such an important aspect of these proposed regulations because, for one, it illustrates how much trust they put into us. I mean, the 85 is so significant, you can't convert to 85%. Either you are a vape shop or you're not a vape shop, in my opinion. There's a lot of hybrid establishments. I mean, I've seen them in tattoo parlors, head shops, gas stations, convenience stores, which is great. I mean, I don't think there's any sense in limiting access to these products, but when they take an 85% threshold, to me, it says that, the people that have put in the work, the value, they started from the beginning, they take time with customers, they're putting the exemptions in that allow us to display, to promote, to interact with our customers. They're putting that trust in us because they know that we've put in the time, we've put in the resources to develop the business, to understand the products, to understand how to use them safely and effectively. So to me, that it's beyond a win. It's such a sign of mutual trust and respect between legislators and us, and I can't thank them enough for doing something like that. And really, that's what we've all been asking for since the beginning. At the same time, the other 15%, or as I said, you're not going to convert a small little corner of your convenience store and all of a sudden go to an 85% threshold. But again, it doesn't preclude you from having these products and being a stop maybe when the shops are closed or something like that. But it does really tunnel in your customers, your users, into an environment where they can learn about them, learn how to use them safely, effectively, as I've said. And I think that's a great thing. Further to that, I mean, there's nothing really to be concerned about. We're still working on trying to find a way to preserve the testing, and even that term is somewhat problematic to us. I mean, I own a chain of vape shops. It's more than just testing. I mean, it's a demonstration of how to use them, again, safely and effectively. There's I don't want to say a skill, but there's a nuance to how you inhale one of these things as opposed to a cigarette. I mean, it's very different. How you fill them, how you activate them. There's concepts like dry burning a coil. These things otherwise we'd be precluded from using these techniques or to illustrate the way you use them, and that could be damaging. We need to be able to preserve the ability to demonstrate them, whether it be, this is how the product might taste when you take it home. That's important because you don't want someone to have an idea in their head and be disappointed. Furthermore, different nicotine strengths. To find the right one for you, are you a 3, are you a 6, are you somewhere in between, are you a 0? Can you do it without nicotine? Without trying that or having the ability to try it, it definitely affects the efficacy of the product themselves. So we're still working on that, but aside from that, these proposed regulations, we're excited about them. It legitimizes the industry itself as a whole, it legitimizes the hard work we've put in over the years, and it legitimizes the technology as something that clearly works, and now we're operating with a set of rules that, again, we have been asking for a number of years.
I'm glad you brought up the sampling in vape shops, because a lot of people are angry about that proposed regulation. The CVA itself has come out and said
absolutely
that it is not happy with it. So what is happening behind the scenes to change that?
So we've been asked to submit, I believe we call it a comment or a response
proposal
to the to a proposal to the proposed regulation. I believe we have a 6-week window to submit that.
Yep.
At which time it would become an ongoing and open discussion. Given the direct discussions we've been having in the past, I can only assume it would be just as engaging and productive as we've been with all the other proposed regulations, so I'm excited about that. So over the next 6 weeks, we plan on reaching out to our members, to general stakeholders, consulting with industry experts, again, air quality experts, and coming up with a system that allows us to maintain the ability, like I said, not just to test and sample, to try flavors, but to demonstrate the products, how they're used safely, anywhere from how to charge them to how to inhale properly, how to exhale properly. These are all things we want to be able to do. So we're going to be talking with our membership. The Kaizen format was very productive. I assume we would do something very similar to that.
Yeah, there is a proposed planned Kaizen that's coming up, which will bring in these experts. It also allows us to bring some medical experts into the room as well.
To those that don't know what Kaizen 2, we've been asked that question a couple times. It's a very structured brainstorming session, I guess is the easiest way to put it. So everything is documented. It's kind of fun with sticky notes, and you have different areas, so it allows people to express whatever's on their brain, pure stream of consciousness, and then the leader of the Kaizen has that in an organized fashion. Then you kind of work backwards from there, and at the end you have no choice but to be left with a very refined set of answers or solutions to problems. So we're going to be conducting another session, at least one, in that format with, again, our stakeholders, our membership, and again, just leaning on our own expertise. Like we said, our board members are stakeholders too. We're all in this together. So we then submit that, and then the conversations are ongoing.
Okay, and so there's also been some questions about window tinting in vape shops and whether or not existing stores that are in like small kiosks could continue to operate. Do we have any more information on that yet?
I think it's too early.
Specifics aren't there. I know through our last membership meeting, for example, that a lot of those questions came up. We'll be at the table to be able to dig into all of those issues. I think in terms of to understand where we are at this moment, right? This moment is when we're taking off the big chunks. From using a football analogy, we're at the 5-yard line, but so much is done between that and getting to your ultimate goal. So from that perspective, this is why engaging with all of these stakeholders outside of just our own knowledge base is really, really important. Because I feel that from a display and promotion point of view, which is exactly what that is, being able to say this is what would qualify as shading versus what doesn't, that's fine. I think really their big goal is they don't want to be able to see that marketing and promotion that they say you'd be giving to an adult is visible by a 14-year-old kid who's walking down the street. Really, that understanding the intent of the person that you're working with is really important, and that really is their intent. I think more importantly is that, if you look from a historical point of view, when the CVA first started, there was 10 or 15 people that got together and said, we need to advocate for ourselves, right? We need to have a conversation with those who make decisions. To take that conversation that started 3 years ago and to be able to say that we're at the table right now with those who are making decisions on how this industry is going to look for years to come really is the most exciting part of how we got to today. And it's going to be a combination of big initiatives, which is bringing in medical directors,
yes,
and to small initiatives to really defining what is best practice by bringing into what they did in Manitoba and into BC and what the federal government is thinking. That's why being at all of these tables is really important, and also engaging with our own legal experts. And it's something that I think that doesn't get talked about enough, is that we have regulatory lawyers and constitutional lawyers and litigators on retainer with the CVA that we engage with.
Constant communication. Again, not talked about enough, but we utilize them to their full potential.
Because from a pure libertarian point of view, there's a thought process that government should just leave us alone, right? And from someone who believes very much in our institutions, like myself, is that I think it's in everyone's interest in order to really dig through every problem in the best interest of Canadians and the best interest of Ontarians. The answer is somewhere in the middle of those two perspectives, I think, ultimately, right? We need a larger body of science and evidence, right? We need to be accountable to continue to drive that. This is the best platform and opportunity that we have to keep pushing that through, right? You don't ask someone to self-learn. It doesn't mean we don't have difficult conversations. I've been in a room with our committee chairs and with our president, who have been quite dramatic with decision makers, saying that this absolutely makes no sense. We should be able to move forward like this because I know it. I've never seen a bureaucrat or a staff member from a minister say, absolutely not, you're crazy, get out of my office, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Is they challenge and say, organize it. Organize it in a way that we can digest it, and that's through policy development. So that is the next evolution, I think, in years 3, 4, and 5, while we deal with S5, while we deal with 174, while we deal with some provinces that are going to either come up with regulation and legislation and or start to refine their regulation and legislation. That this is an opportunity to continue to build our arguments, because this industry is here for not just next year or the year after or for 3 years, but we're talking about setting it up for success for year 25, year 50, and year 75.
And it changes and moves quickly sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like the CVA is definitely doing a lot of work to help this process along. Getting back to the specifics of the proposed regulations that we have out now. So you both expressed that it was a win to have a specialty vape shop category put in. What about e-juice manufacturers or device manufacturers? Is there anything that they need to know that comes out of either Bill 174 or the proposed regulations?
The majority of it, as of right now, I can speak to this as an e-liquid man. We're actually butt feet away from our lab at the moment. That's more Bill S5 as of right now in the CCCR compliance, which as of right now is tackling container and labeling issues. That process, we've completed a full conversion as of 3. I don't want to spend too much time on S5, but we've completed a full conversion as of probably 3 weeks ago now. So all of our products are manufactured in not only a fully certified ISO 7, ISO 9001, 2015 clean room, but it's done so with full traceability, recall procedures, all the staff are properly trained, certified. Plus, we have compliant containers and compliant labels, and that wasn't too big of a hassle to get done. I mean, it's a learning experience in some ways. We did a lot of consulting to make that happen very quickly. But I guess the flip side is we need to ensure, now that we've been and this is my perspective, now that we've been giving these exemptions, of course, we've never targeted children in the past. That's never been part of our business model. It's ludicrous. But we need to ensure, I mean, again, from my perspective, that we've been given certain exemptions in order to do this. We can't run wild with them. What we need to do is ensure that, number one, we are not using any form of communication or graphics, logos, stylizing that could be construed reasonably, of course, to targeting children specifically, which ties into my next point I'll bring up, but that includes using nostalgic cereal brands or cartoon characters. And it's inherently bad to do so, but not just because an argument can be made that it's targeting children, because I don't think any of us, even some of the worst offenders of these marketing tools, no one's targeting children. They're maybe appealing to the nostalgia of an adult, but the flip side is there's a lot of IP theft. You're talking trademark infringement. Straight up, sometimes it's just stealing and calling it, Kit Kat or something else. That is very problematic. And again, because we now have exemptions in place that are allowing us to advertise and promote in a certain way, we have to, number one, stop running wild with it and don't get any ideas that this is something that is acceptable or sane in any way. It's completely insane. So to me, that's just being proactive. I mean, they didn't mention anything like that specifically, but again, I don't want to give the impression that we've been graced with these exemptions. I mean, we worked hard for them, but we feel we deserve them. We've demonstrated our points and arguments in a very reasonable, structured way. This is the result that came from it. Let's take that time to reflect and say, you know what, maybe we should, change this where we're advertising as candy or something else. So I think that's the best takeaway from that, from an e-liquid manufacturing point of view going forward. Just always act with the mindset that these are products designed for adults and market them accordingly.
I think from a process point of view, specifically as it relates to items like S5, is Sean Casey, the president of the CVA, is on the SEC committee, which is a leading stakeholder in the development of S5. Sam Tam, another board member, is on ULC, and not only working on those issues within national perspective, but also is going down to California and different states in the U.S. working with those bodies. We've had advocacy groups and policy development groups in the U.S. approach the CVA saying, we'd like to model a lot of what we're doing in the U.S. Off of what you've done in Canada in terms of really getting broad-based and being everywhere where decisions are being made, right? That's the first real important step. And our board members are 100% volunteers. It not only is it volunteers, it's volunteers with a big check coming out of their pocket because they fly around on their own dime. They go up to Ottawa. They stay in their own rooms. I mean, we're very lucky to have these industry leaders make this personal investment, both of their time and of their own financial resources, to be in the right places. And these are people who are subject matter experts in their realm. So I think we're really well represented, both as a national footprint and starting to develop an international footprint for the types of regulations and legislation we'd like to see in this country. I think from a manufacturer's point of view is that so many of the leading manufacturers in this country have already taken their steps. If you look at Charlie's facility here, it's beautiful, it's well done, it's clean, it's also ISO certified, it's got best manufacturing practices.
We're working on GMP standards right now with isolocity.
Yeah. So, but if you look at that, that wasn't regulated. It wasn't. It didn't come through the bureaucratic channel. It said, now you have to clean up your act. Right, and it amazes me that so many in the industry have already taken those preemptive steps. I think where we're really going to thrive in the eyes of decision makers is to be able to showcase this, to be able to show them that so many in the industry have taken those steps ahead of being forced. Because again, they're taking that 25, 50, and 75-year view to their business models and the value that they want to bring Canadians.
So, getting back to to Bill 174. Is there anything else? So from the perspective of, say, some guy who owns a vape shop, and now we have Bill 174 come out, and there's a lot in there, and the regulations, change a lot of, from a straight reading of Bill 174, a lot of those things aren't going to apply under these proposed regulations. So from the average, owner of a small shop, from his perspective, is there anything else he needs to know or should know about what he'll need to do to comply?
This is my answer. It's a very personal thing. We found this out time and time again. Things that may seem cut and dry to us might not be so to someone else. That is why we want to work with our membership, with CVA members, the industry stakeholders themselves. Read it, familiarize yourself with it. We're at the table now. This is the time to give input. Because, in my shops, I think that I'm happy with this a certain way. That might not be the general way another shop is run. So please, even as a consumer, actually, speak with your local vape shop. Ask them, are they part of the CVA? If not, come talk to us. We believe everyone should be joining the CVA at this point, but we have this opportunity to present proposals and reports to the people that make decisions, and we need as much input as we can possibly get. I mean, it's one thing to develop with our members that come out to every meeting and input all the time, but we need new discussions happening, and we need to do that through the proper channels, refine it using all of our service providers that do this for us. So again, as a consumer, encourage your local vape shops to come talk with the CVA, and if you are a part of the CVA, give us your input, your reading of the bill itself. I would hate to, this is just me as a business owner, I would hate to speak for, a broad majority and saying, because I'm okay with this, you should be too. If you have concerns, discuss them with us and during the processes that we're starting, and we'll represent you as we always do.
And is there anything else people should know about kind of the timeline going forward?
Well, right now I'm working within that 6 to 8 week timeline as it relates to sampling in Bill 174. There'll be several communications coming out, not only on how we're preparing for the process, input into what we're developing. Just to build on some closing statements from the organization, right? And from our point of view, is collectivity is important. Right? When I represent 250 or 300 stakeholders and I represent 1,000, the more of the industry that come together and band together, we're not always going to see everything the same way. It's impossible. We can't. But there's some core fundamentals that we want, and that is to allow for vaping to be legitimized and to be utilized for Canadian adult smokers, period. We can all agree on that. And that the CVA, in its mandate, has always been to work with government. Our mandate is to have a seat at that table. So that, I think, we have executed on.
Absolutely. We've come miles from years ago.
Yeah. And I know that there's other thought processes about how, we should hold government accountable in different ways. There's lots of ways to interact and effectively interact with government. And we applaud other organizations and the tax that they have taken that they thought or they feel that are going to be effective for them and for their message. For our message, we believe it's very, very critical that we're at that table and that we're continually engaged. So having the membership to support us is key. So that, in my mind, is the number one thing that people can do to support our interaction with government, is be a member. The second is local engagement. Never be afraid to call up your MPP or your MP to let your feelings be known. Do it in a respectful way, in a calm way, but you are a business owner, you are a citizen of the country, you are a voter. So if you can absolutely engage your local leadership in terms of your MPP, your MP, and I'm sure as it's coming, council members, that's the second part, is get to know who your players are. Call your MPP office and find out who they are. So those are the two biggest things. The third thing is never be afraid to reach out. You can always call me, you can email me at dtempest@thecva.org.
Any board member.
Or any board member.
Thank you both very much for coming out and taking the time to explain this to us. I think it's been very informative, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. And Jesse, thank you for joining the CVA and being a member of the team.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.